What's up everybody and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. Now today, I feel a little upset, a little salty. I feel bamboozled, run amok, led astray. Now, I'm not here to question the opinions of other reviewers, but I do recognize that they are just opinions, and sometimes opinions could be a little bit biased, especially if you were hoping for something in a title and it didn't actually deliver, and that's why I think it's very important to have the retrospective. So in honor of the new announcement of the Resident Evil game Biohazard, which is now returning back to its horror roots, we're going to be taking a look back at Resident Evil 6. Now this is actually a funny story. I was in another country and I happened to go into what their equivalent of a GameStop was. And on the shelf I saw a box that said Resident Evil 6 and it was in the PS4. And I said to myself, Alan, why the hell didn't you ever play Resident Evil 6 on the PS3 or the Xbox 360? And that really got me thinking, why the hell didn't I play it? Now, like many of you, I was very curious to see what people's opinions were about this game. So, I went to the major websites, mostly Game Trailers, GameSpot, and IGN. And I have to say, at the time, they weren't really giving very favorable reviews for this game. For the most part, I really agreed with some of the criticisms that they had. How Resident Evil kind of lost its way and was no longer survival horror and kind of morphed into something a little more action-oriented. Now, that in and of itself doesn't really break the game, and when I heard a lot of reviewers bitching about the camera angles and the camera in general, I thought to myself, you realize this is a Resident Evil game, right? I mean, the camera hasn't always been very friendly. So that's the first thing that happened. Given all the unfavorable reviews and some of the things that people were complaining about, I said, well, I could wait until the price lowers and then I'll pick it up and I'll play it at some time later. Yeah, well that shit never happened. And after a while, when you started playing on the PS4 a lot and you were so used to those amazing graphics, it's hard to go back to a PS3 title. This is especially true when you consider that not that many people even like this game. So, and due in large part because this game was ported over to the PS4, I decided to pick it up and give it a chance. Now, I'm gonna say something a little controversial, so don't jump down my throat or blow up the comment sections. For me, this essentially ends the debate about remasters, because I'm so glad that they do these. Because to be honest with you, there was no way in hell I was gonna go play this on the PS3, given the fact that I'm so used to PS4 graphics. And I'm so glad that they remastered or did whatever the hell they did in terms of improvements, because this game is freaking awesome. In the interest of full disclosure, as I mentioned before, I never actually played the PS3 version, but the PS4 version is beautiful and it runs buttery smooth. Now of course I'm sure there are a lot of games that look better than this one, but you ever have those moments in a video game when you're playing them that you just look at it and say, my god, that's freaking beautiful. I had a lot of those moments in this game. And for me, that's the biggest measure on how beautiful a game is what my eyes are telling me, because they're not going to lie to me. And I put more importance on that than what a reviewer is telling me. Now, if you're like me and you didn't get to play this game the first time around or when it was released on the PS3, I'm going to give you a little breakdown of what you can expect from this game. Essentially, there are 4 major campaigns, and they all kind of have a different vibe to them. Interestingly, you can play these campaigns in any order, but we'll get back to that a little bit later. Now, in your first campaign, you can play as either Leon Kennedy or Helena Harper, and what I really like about this campaign is that it's the most reminiscent of the incident at Raccoon City. It definitely has the atmosphere, the sense of isolation and dread from the original games. Admittedly, what really breaks the immersion from that throwback of the older games is when you see your character perform a melee attack in that classic John Woo style action. But to be honest, after a while it felt like second nature, and I certainly never got tired of taking down an enemy with a karate kick. In the second campaign chronologically, you're given a choice between playing as Chris Redfield or Pierce Nevins, another member of the bioterrorism unit. This campaign is obviously much grander in scale, and you're essentially running around a major city that's been completely infected. For all intents and purposes, Chris is a walking tank, and this level is very heavy on gunplay. I really love the chaos and the cinematics in this level. You really get a sense that the city's under siege and it's been overrun with the infected. Also, there's another component to it. I've always wanted to play as part of a unit in a Resident Evil game, and the Chris level really allows you to do that. You really get a sense that you're working together with your unit to try to take back the city. It was really cool. In the third campaign, you can either play as Jake Mueller, aka Wesker's son, or Sherry Birkin. This level is heavily scripted and has a lot more QuickTime events, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because they did them really well. There is also a much greater emphasis on melee attack. Both Jake and Sherry have their own unique animations, and I'll be honest with you, it never got stale and it never got boring. One other thing I need to mention, while none of the dialogue in this game is Shakespeare in the Park, I did like the banter between these two, and of all the characters, they were the least bland and one-dimensional. Rounding out the final campaign is Ada Wong. And this was hands down my most favorite campaign for two very important reasons and something that I've always loved Resident Evil games for. Now the first one is just a personal preference. I really loved Resident Evil Code Veronica, and this level really feels like that game. The other reason is that this has a lot more emphasis on puzzle solving, something that I've always liked. In terms of weaponry, Ada's level is also very unique. She has access to a high-powered crossbow and can traverse obstacles with a grapple gun. Finally, we're given a little more backstory on Ada, and I thought that it was an interesting part of the campaign. Overall, what I really liked about this game is the amount of variety that there is in terms of gameplay, locations, puzzle solving, action. I don't see what the problem was initially. Now, many of the criticisms that I saw about this game was that it was all over the place and it was sloppy, that it was kind of schizophrenic and didn't know what it wanted to be. But you know what? Having played the game and invested the 20-some plus hours of the total length of the campaigns, I have to disagree. I think that this game knew exactly what it was trying to be and exactly what it was trying to do. Now, we can argue all day long about how Resident Evil has changed or how it's lost its way and it's no longer survival horror, but that's not really how you should judge this game. I mean, to be fair to anything, you can't judge it on what you want it to be, you have to judge it on what it is. First and foremost, this is an action game with horror elements in it. And if you evaluate it based on that criteria, then this is a really awesome game. Now, is it a perfect game? Of course not. Is the dialogue cringeworthy? Yes. Is it over the top? Absolutely. But the most important aspect about any game is, did you have fun with it? Did you have wow moments in the game? And did it make you smile at times? And I got that experience with this game. You know what Resident Evil 6 really did for me is it made me think back to before we had terms like AAA titles and overinflated budgets, even though this game is really an anachronism for both those terms. It really took me back to my childhood, to those NES days when I was playing a game that maybe wasn't so popular but I was really having a great time with. You know, the point in all this, guys, is for you to experience for yourself what these games are really like. And don't always rely on reviewers to give you the last word. I mean, hell, you don't even have to listen to me. And yes, I know, sometimes money is a consideration, but you can always wait until these games are at a bargain bin. Which seems kind of silly for me to say, I realize, because I completely forgot about this game. The thing is, guys, always trust the most leading authority on your opinion. And that's yourself. One last thing before I go, guys. There is an order to these levels that you can play them in, but I recommend that you play them in the order that they're given to you. There is a much more Pulp Fiction vibe to them, and it makes it that much more impactful when the stories intersect. Alright, so that's been my official retrospective on Resident Evil 6. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.